Hey, everybody. So I've been looking forward to this conference since it was first announced. But about 6 weeks ago, spending a few days in St. Louis with a number of people that were here today, I got really excited thinking about it. And the reason why is that I realized this is likely the largest single gathering of my people. Lots of people I already know, but also I feel fairly confident if you're motivated to come here, then you're almost guaranteed to be one of my people. And so I started to think about what that actually meant. And I think it's people who want to build things together to make the world better. You're not people who just show up to do your job and do the bare minimum. Your work's more meaningful than a paycheck. You're not people who only focus on the priorities of your organization. You look for ways to align what you do to help the broader industry and the world. You look to nudge things forward in practical ways. You use whatever tools it takes to achieve your goal, even ones on the bleeding edge that may be rough around the edges. And you start with a collaborative and open mindset. Perhaps the core thing is that you look for ways to contribute to something bigger than yourself. And I'm not speaking just about the rock stars of our community who are producing so much. It's easy to compare yourself and feel like you aren't contributing, but please rest assured that you are. Just by being here, by spending your own money or spending down some social capital to convince your company to send you, you are contributing. We're still incredibly early in just how far this cloud-native geospatial movement can go. And it helps a lot for you to take a chance on coming to this first-time conference and show the world that many people are interested in CNG. And you can continue to contribute by attempting to use these new approaches, giving feedback where it doesn't work, and sharing successes where it does. So thank you all for coming and contributing. I'm really excited to be here with you all to build better together. About a year and a half ago, I gave a talk on this idea of cloud-native spatial data infrastructures. I'm not going to go deep into it, but it took an idea that had been around a while, the spatial data infrastructure, and proposed a much simpler architecture. Just use these cloud-native geospatial formats to store all the data in object storage. No servers, databases, or clusters needed. The talk was at the FOSS4G North America conference, and we were just outside of DC. And at some level, I think I was hoping that the attendees who work in government would see it and start to run with the idea to build a more resilient and accessible infrastructure by just making things simpler. But in my mind, we needed the government to lead the creation of this infrastructure to make geospatial data accessible. I'd really internalized that the policies and institutional arrangements were far more important than the technology. You can't just build it and they will come. You needed governments to write laws, lead the standards creation, and require everyone to share their data. But my thinking has shifted on the need to wait for government, especially when the government-centered data infrastructure we've taken for granted has recently been shown to be much more fragile than we realized. It's been inspiring to see individuals and organizations spring into action, and Jed really helped me realize that we are already building the cloud-native spatial data infrastructure. We have global data sets with 2.6 billion buildings, 300 million roads, 400 million addresses, with each increasing in quantity and quality every month. We have 119 million field boundaries, all completely interoperable, over 100 million places, trillions of pixels of point clouds, so over a petabyte of weather and climate modeling data in ZAR, plus hundreds of millions of embeddings. And all of these streamable directly from object storage. And most of it has great searchable metadata and a full ecosystem of tooling, enabling easy search and immediate access. This has all been done with an investment level that's far less than that spent on spatial data infrastructure. And I suspect there's more real usage of the data than those provided by SDIs. And like I said, we're just getting started, and I can already feel how things are accelerating. But an SDI is not just the data. It includes the standards to make the data interoperable, the software that enables people to use the data to do things that matter. And it's traditionally included the government policies that require data sharing. I do believe more is needed than just software, standards, and data, but I've come to realize that government policies are really just a particular type of incentive. These laws and policies that require sharing of data are actually really blunt incentives, and they're much more sticks than carrots. What we really need are more nuanced incentive structures so diverse actors can all collaborate in their contributions to open global geospatial datasets. OpenStreetMap was the first to really innovate with getting these incentives right for creating and sharing geospatial information, building a huge community of contributors to edit a single map together. And I've been really excited to see Overture emerge, building on OpenStreetMap, but doing an even better job of aligning the incentives of large companies like Meta, Microsoft, and AWS, and bringing AI/ML into the creation of the map. They've done an amazing job working in a cloud-native geospatial manner. And by that, I don't just mean adopting GeoParquet. I mean actively collaborating with a number of communities to help build the virtuous cycle of data, software, and standards. To me, the success of Overture really points to this notion that we shouldn't center spatial data collaboration around governments. No government's created a comparable data set, and indeed, Overture's data for any given country is often better than what their government is able to provide. A single global data set with a consistent scheme is far more useful than a patchwork of diverse data sets from governments. But there's no global government that can write laws and policies for a global spatial data infrastructure. As we work on a new approach, I do believe it's time to move away from the word infrastructure. I think the word does a nice job of getting across how foundational spatial data has the potential to be, but also make us feel like this mega project, something only a government could pull off, like bridges, railways, highways, where it's this huge investment to be paid with taxpayer dollars. I think what we're all building together is the global spatial data ecosystem. The connotations of this feel right to me. It's dynamic, adaptable interplay of many organisms working together in harmony. There's both competition and collaboration and space for many different approaches. With an infrastructure, there's this implication you build it once and you're done, maybe you have to keep fixing it. Well, with an ecosystem, you think about the overall health of the system and how it adapts to changes and improves as it evolves. An ecosystem's also far more resilient in the face of threats to its survival. A forest fire doesn't wipe out an ecosystem, it's just part of the overall cycle of life. I love that this conference includes a full track on building resilient data infrastructures, as I believe it's essential that we design our systems to survive and adapt. You can think of the different software tools, standards, and data sets as different organisms in the overall ecosystem. They're grouped in different communities that interact on many different axes: Zara, Cog, Stack, Copic, Parquet, Python, Rust, Go, Java, Overture, OpenStreetMap, BigQuery, DuckDB, Sedona. And you see competition and collaboration, where new projects, standards, and data sets may come and flourish, and others may fade. But from the big picture, all the different parts contribute to a whole movement that's evolving and adapting. Don't worry if you don't already know most of these terms. It's a lot if you're new, but there's sessions at the conference covering pretty much almost all of them. So there's much more to do, but it's awesome to look at all that's happening and realize how much momentum there is towards a global spatial data ecosystem that's not centered on governments and their policies. The center of gravity is moving to people, to active citizens of the global world. So that's the general idea of the global spatial data ecosystem, but I think it'd be helpful to try to define it more directly. There's many different definitions of SDI. This is one I do like, sort of emphasizes the discovery and use of geospatial information. But the thing that occurs to me is that it's really complicated to set up all these institutional arrangements, attempt to coordinate everyone. I'd like to propose something a lot simpler, something both bolder, but also more practical. Instead of trying to get everyone to coordinate, let's just build something better together. In the SDI paradigm, you let everyone do their own thing and then try to standardize to interoperability. I say we focus on a small set of global data sets, coordinating with those who want to collaborate, leaving a trail of software, standards, models, and practices that can be reused by anyone. And we've already started. In some cases, have made significant progress. This is my list off the top of my head, but I don't think it's actually important that we align on an exact list. We just all work on what we think are the big ones. The key to me is to aspire for global, and to slowly get each data set to match or exceed what governments can provide. We must evolve the tools to create the data and make it accessible, working together and sharing what we learn along the way. Each data set's an opportunity to experiment and innovate, and indeed it's a benefit to have different approaches for the most foundational data sets. And then when things work, we come together to create lightweight standards, to share best practices so successes in one area helps other global data set efforts. I believe what makes this work is the center of the effort is not a protocol, an agreement, or a standard, but the actual data. The result is directly useful to many people, and each improvement increases the potential user base as it successfully works for more use cases. So it's people planting seeds, building the ecosystem, working together. One thing I do love about the way this ecosystem works is that most everything's done as an incremental change, building on what's come before, usually backwards compatible. But many small incremental changes over time leads to huge shifts and improvements in the whole. I think there's a number of aspects of this approach that compare favorably against the traditional SDIs, and that working in this way will lead to much larger real-world impact than SDIs ever achieved. I'm not going to read through all the details, but the key points to me are this ecosystem's more aligned with how open source software works. It's more bottom-up, more practical, more rooted in getting things done and working than attaining some abstract perfection. So that's my version of what we're all building towards. But I want to shift gears and share a bit about why I think we're on the right path, pointing out some highlights of the ecosystem. This view is biased by what I look at, and the awesome thing about this conference is that it highlights many different aspects of this incredible community. So to be sure to drink it all in, talk to lots of people, and hopefully you'll share your version of this with other audiences. As an engineer by temperament, the core thing I love is how incredible the technology is. I'm not going to geek out on this. We've got tons of sessions to do that. But I will say this feels like the most exciting time for geospatial software in my entire career, which is closing in on 25 years. Feels like every couple months I come across a new project or technique that's a step forward, remixing and refining the core to meet more needs and do things better. And when I step back, it's clear that all these smart steps are building towards a major improvement for how things are done. And I love most everyone seems focused on building bridges, from legacy formats like GeoTIFFs and LAS to work on the cloud, to allowing systems to work across programming languages and bridging to the mainstream data world. I do want to bring attention to this announcement, as I think it's got huge potential and is a testament to the way this community works. Iceberg has a ton of momentum in the mainstream data world. It's an open specification that enables a high level of interoperability between a ton of tools. You can store your data in Iceberg and read it with many different query engines. And most of those engines have solid geospatial support. So getting geospatial types in Iceberg gives us a really powerful way to share spatial information. Most every large company is leveraging one of those query engines to give them an unprecedented ability to understand and analyze huge amounts of data to gain competitive advantages. But it's almost entirely focused on generating insights from within their own walls, and they have little understanding of what's happening in the world that could affect their plans. If we're able to publish global geospatial data sets in Iceberg format, then the friction to bring in data from outside a company's walls essentially goes to zero. Any company that uses Snowflake, BigQuery, similar tools to analyze their data could immediately access relevant data about the state of the planet in the same way they are instantly joining to their own data for insights. And as part of the overall effort to bring geospatial to Iceberg, we also got the core Parquet format to understand geometries. This is the natural evolution of GeoParquet, and it's another great bridge to that mainstream data world where everybody using Parquet is going to see a geometry type now. This is the pull request, which was a truly epic discussion, over 400 comments. And I love that the first one is Gia from Where Robots, who's here highlighting the work of GeoParquet, as he played a huge role in bringing the communities together. One of the things I'm most excited about is how we're seeing a new class of companies that are doing incredible things to make CNG accessible to enterprise users while functioning as core parts of the ecosystem. They contribute to open standards, software, and data while figuring out sustainable business models. Fused has awesome serverless functions that can effortlessly scale up to analyze massive amounts of data. Earthmover's making the Czar ecosystem more enterprise grade with its Array Lake platform. I think my favorite right now may be Where Robots, who have an incredible cloud-native platform to handle massive vector and raster data processing. And I have to give a shout out to Planet, my main employer, with our Planet Insights platform. It's got amazing processing capabilities and is lowering the barrier to extracting insights from petabytes of satellite imagery. And it uses Stack, Czar, and Cogs extensively and has some exciting launches in the next few months. It's also a really good sign to me that many of the larger and older, more established companies in the geospatial world are recognizing the value of cloud-native geospatial. All the companies listed support at least one of the core CNG formats and are embracing the overall approach. And I'd like to highlight Safe FME, as they've been one of those companies I've always respected, and they're really introducing their practical user base of over 200,000 to our ecosystem. Final reason I feel we're on the right path is that there's a big emphasis on education. I love all the tutorials taking place here, and I'm thankful to everyone who's taken the time to write documentation, answer questions, and just be generally generous, open, and collaborative. The tech's awesome, but at this moment, I do believe the most critical step for adoption is to explain it all in many different ways. And today, all the education material we create gets supercharged. We're not just teaching people, but we're teaching the LLMs with the raw information that they can adapt into code and tutorials that are tailored to just what people need. The learning process is becoming way more interactive than just searching through docs, but we need to feed high quality information to make it work well. So now I want to share a few thoughts on where I see us going next. My personal calls to action to accelerate this global geospatial data ecosystem. Think of them as seeds that I'm planting and cultivating, and I'd welcome you all to join my efforts or to try a different approach to the same goals. But I'm also excited for you to work on totally different things. Just share your findings, work with others so we're all building together towards a better world. And of course, I'm going to talk about AI. It's coming, it's going to change everything in ways we can't imagine. But what I'm most interested in right now is the way we can treat AI as a part of our ecosystem, a collaborator in our mission to generate global data sets. Overture made a huge leap in its buildings by leveraging AI-produced data sets, going from about 500 million from OpenStreetMap to 2.6 billion. But it was mostly a few data dumps from Google and Microsoft produced by teams kind of in isolation, leveraging mostly their huge amounts of proprietary data. What I hope to see is a more direct feedback loop between people editing the data, the models that create the data, and the global data sets. Right now, models will train on large amounts of hand-labeled data. There's little direct connection between a new edit made and improvement to one of the models that produces the data. But what if editing efforts of people could be directly centered where the models are weakest, with the model telling users where it needs better information, and they in turn create labels that improve the model in a feedback loop? This is known in the literature as active learning. The fastest feedback loop I've seen is from this company called Blackshark, where you can see in near real time how your edits improve the model. They also provide visualizations of overall model uncertainty to help you choose which areas to refine. Even if instant feedback isn't always possible, I hope we can work towards an ecosystem where users can easily test the output of satellite imagery models. And if the model makes mistakes in an area they care about, that they can improve the output data and contribute it back to the global spatial data ecosystem as labeled data that can be used for testing, training, and model training. These contributions ideally go into what's called a benchmark dataset, which is a curated, harmonized, globally balanced set of geometries and images formatted to make it easy for any AI/ML researcher to just focus on model innovations. The best version of this that I've seen is Fields of the World, started by Dr. Hannah Kerner and accelerated by Taylor Geospatial Engine. They gathered all the available open label data for field boundaries and transformed it into a consistent global data set that's easy for researchers to work with. And they're building an ecosystem of tools to make it all accessible and collaborative at each layer of the stack. I believe one of the most important things to build is really robust metrics for model performance. And they need to be against things that users actually care about, not just abstract F1 scores that you compete, but the output needs to be what users will actually use. This slide's fictional for now, but phase 2 of FTW should get closer to making it a reality. So for every global data set we work with, there should be a globally balanced, high-quality labeled data set used to score any new model, with a great leaderboard to help everyone track progress and to steer the ML researchers towards real-world applicability and not just some abstract perfection. These types of metrics and leaderboards can have a huge effect in accelerating everything. There's a ton of new innovation, huge potential to add general approaches to specific data types with foundation models and the LLMs, but it's hard to separate the hype from the reality. Are these new approaches really better? If we have global leaderboards on the metrics that are actually useful for real users, we can spur on competition in a productive way. So I'd see a similar ecosystem to fields of the world around each of the global data sets we're aiming for, sharing best practices and tools between different communities while letting each figure out their own path. Each would have their own set of benchmark data, models, and metrics, but ideally there'd be a lot of collaboration between data sets on the tools to make it easy to generate data and improve the benchmark data. So these ecosystems are already forming, and so I think we have great potential to greatly accelerate the ability to generate global data sets from satellite imagery. But I'd be the first to tell you that detections from space aren't even half the answer. Roads without the name or speed limit, ship detections without fusing with AIS data, deforestation without knowing if it's legal or illegal, are all insufficient for most use cases. But I think we can use global detections to bootstrap an ecosystem of contributors. It's far easier to get people to contribute to correct a mistake or improve something that exists. And my strong hunch is the key to unlock this is something most people consider boring, but I believe is incredibly important. These common data schemas and identifiers. I believe that the adoption of common schemas across a variety of organizations can then accelerate the people models data feedback loop. Since when governments start to adapt the same schemas as the detection-centered global data sets, they in turn become higher quality training data for the models to create even better data sets. And the feedback loops that create the high quality global data sets in turn lead to an acceleration in the overall feedback loops around software tools, standards, and AI to derive higher level insights from data and make it more accessible. As great tools for standard schemas increase in capability, it incentivizes even more schema alignment to take advantage of the great tools, resulting in a virtuous cycle. If anyone's interested in working on schema standardization, there's a great new effort that came out of Fields of the World to improve vector data interoperability. Think of it like Stack, but not requiring an asset. The geometry is the data. It's still very, very early, but the goal is to make a toolkit that makes it easy to standardize for anyone to define their own set of standardized schemas in a bottom-up way to enable better interoperability and accelerate the feedback loops. Big shout out to Matthias Moore, who did all the core work on the spec and tools. If you're interested in using or collaborating in some way, come find me or him in the next couple days. So there's obviously huge potential for AI to transform our industry, but I think this community has the right practical mindset and has built the foundations to really steer acceleration we're seeing in a solid direction. And with our clear goal of creating global data sets collaboratively, I think we can build better together with AI. And now I'd like to share a bit about why I believe this work matters so much, why it's where I choose to spend my time and energy, both in work and outside of work. I do think there's enough interesting problems with the core tech to keep most of us engaged, but I also really appreciate that, when I pull my head up out of the details, that I feel like I'm working towards something bigger than myself, and I suspect most of you feel the same way. I believe we're at a crux in history for humanity, and I'd like to sink into that word crux a bit. Most definitions are more synonyms of the heart of or the center of. But when I say we're at a crux, I think more of how climbers use the word. It describes the hardest point of a climb. And in climbing, it's really a noun, the crux, that describes a specific place on each climbing route, the place where you need to use all your skill and energy or you're going to fall off. And it really feels to me like we're at the crux, that if we mess up here, it's going to be a big fall. Maybe not fatal, maybe humanity survives in some form, but we've got to make it through this really hard point if we're going to thrive. Every day, it becomes clear we need to cooperate to solve global challenges related to deforestation, climate change, air quality, pandemics, biodiversity, food security, supply chains, and more. And I'm quite confident that shared geospatial data is essential to solve those challenges. We need a much more complete understanding of what is happening in the world than exists today. And to get that understanding, we need the right ecosystem for the creation of that data and the tools to make the data accessible and actionable to that mainstream world, which to me is exactly what we're all working towards. We have all the tools and people we need to make a huge impact and usher in a brighter future as long as we do it together. So I believe this ecosystem we're building really matters. And though we're just a small group, no more than 200, 250 people in this room, I'm fully convinced that the world changes from dedicated groups of people working together. And I believe this is the right group to change the world. Not just change the geospatial world, but to be the ones to bridge the incredible potential of geospatial insights to the mainstream world and improve the ability for humanity to make decisions about our future. So my call to action for everyone here is to continue to contribute. Soak it all in while you're here, be inspired by what everyone else is doing, and start to hatch your plans of what to do next and who to do it with. If you've not coded before, I do encourage you to try out the latest AI tools and scratch your own itch, attempt to fix some problem that fell out of your hands, but there's also so much to do if you're not a coder and educating and advocating. And after this conference, I want to encourage each of you to be a real advocate for CNG. Bring what you learned here to your organization and to others in your network. Look for opportunities to teach and spread the word about this ecosystem. And trumpet your successes with Cloud-Native Geospatial. Take the time to write up the wins. The more organizations that successfully adopt and adapt the tech, the easier it is for others to do so and accelerate the whole ecosystem. So let's keep building better together. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and I'm really excited to see what the next couple of days brings. Thank you.